Well, let's get going here because I hope this turns in to be a nice little session. So we've got 20 some slides here. I got a little wordy, so I'll probably be scrolling through these pretty quick. But basically, this is the Wing Runner refresher course that we talked about last Saturday and that I put together. And this is also a presentation that I'm proposing as a template, and this first slide being the template that the chapter or the club adopts. And it's got one little mistake in there. I'm kind of surprised nobody's ever has not seen it yet, but this is what I kind of propose. And it's a PowerPoint template that, you know, if somebody wants to have a presentation and they're not sure how to do it, I can help put that thing together because I've got it set up that way. Okay.
You would be speaking about the international airport?
Yeah.
Yeah. Although for the people that haven't heard, Paul, I believe did it twice, landed a citation in Alexandria's. Yeah. Well, landed and obviously took off again, but which I was amazed. I was amazed at, but
yeah, it'll do a 2,700 foot strip, pretty nice. You know, it's a citation one, but yeah, it does it real nice. And we came in there to pick up the Gaither Trio and some of their guests one time as a demonstration. So, but if I can move on now, so this is this. I got to remember to hit that. This is my profile. Basically, I'm a 3-year member of the club, but I'm a past president, EAA Chapter 256 here in Lafayette. But I started flying 50 years ago. I got my private pilot's license in October of 1970, and I've got 30 years of experience. That doesn't quite add up because down at the bottom, I was also a project manager and engineering team lead for 20 years with Caterpillar. So I was a project manager and team lead for the large offshore petroleum and marine engines. And that was a fun job. And the reason I went that way is because in my aviation career, it just seemed like I was on a job for 2 years, then off for six months, and having to look for another job. So I kind of got tired of that. And the way at the time I left, the flying community was rapidly disappearing. So I've got an airline transport rating with citation type and 7,000 hours accident-free hours, and I'm a graduate of Ball State University and 2 degrees from Purdue University in engineering. So the purpose of today's presentation is twofold. We want to refresh the knowledge of the wing runner's role in a safe operation and handling of gliders. I also want to demonstrate this as a method of training that we can do online where we don't have to get together, or also have a way that if we are at the club and at the clubhouse, we can have a way of communicating with everybody who doesn't show up for that day. And again, I'm going to preference this, my qualifications. I'm a newbie at soaring. Now, I think I've only got 10 or 15 hour flights so far. So I've relied quite heavily on Tom and Rick for helping me out with this. And I've also went through and gathered a bunch of references from the flying handbooks, the glider handbook that Tom convinced me to buy. Actually, he convinced me to buy 2 books, so I got those. And then heavily pulling in on the Soaring Safety Foundation's Wing Runner course, and also that offers the final exam and certificate. I went ahead and put in the crew schedule, and that Rick had sent out. I think this is his first attempt at flying season. And just as a reference here, information in this PowerPoint that I'll save this as a PDF sometime, and then we can send it out to the chapter members. But these are the phases that I've learned that require wing runners, and possibly starting out with the glider assembly either in a hangar or assembled out of a trailer. And then the ground handling, which would be the hangar to the flight line, and then position, the important part of positioning on the runway. Then all the tasks that are involved with pre-flight, launching, and recovery. So the personnel and equipment that are involved in this, I really love this picture. I'd love to find something like that to rebuild. That would be so cool to do if we could do that, but oh well. But you know, the key person who is really in lead of all these tasks is the glider pilot. He's the one that controls everything. And the next one would be the tow pilot, our ground crew chief, and our ground personnel. And then also the equipment involved is critical as the tow rope and the glider dolly that I hear we have had a problem with once. Batteries, radios, and what I love to drive is the ground tow vehicle, because it goes pretty quick, and I need to remind myself of that when I'm towing a glider, you know. But we know there's a braking process that works with the chapter. Several of the members know it. The assembly, if it's in a hangar, sometimes there's no assembly required, or some assembly is required. But several of the gliders I've noticed have to have their wings put on, and that's at least a two-person task. And the trailer, that is, of course, the complete assembly of the glider is definitely a two-person task. And it's also the requirement that it's going to be assembled outside. And so it's going to need a requirement of shielding from the wind during the build process. And both of these, though, require an assembly checklist to be rigorously followed and the aircraft tied down, which we'll talk about in the ground handling and tie down section of the presentation. So the assembly, the wing runners assist the glider pilot in the assembly process. But the important thing for the wing runners to remind themselves of, if they're unsure of anything, they seek instruction from that glider pilot. He is the one that controls the operation. And there's several things that they can do. They can use prime. Yes. Somebody say something? Okay. But the main reference in the assembly process is the pilot's operating manual or the glider handbook. You know, it contains the procedure for each assembly, gives you a required crew, suggests how many crew you need to assemble that, and then also talks about the location of shielding from the wind and not building on a slope and not having any distractions like when I first came to the club I would do. Wander around and watch them. Then a glider pilot at that point in time completes his critical assembly checklist. And that's usually done the first flight of the day, and the wing runners will assist if requested. You know, we're not there to distract, we're only there to assist. And the Soaring Safety Foundation recommends that a second set of eyes be observe the process and check it. Do I hear somebody trying to speak up? I don't know if I'm. I think I've got it so everybody can look, can share. Stop moving, yeah.
Hey, Paul, this is Dave. You might want to ask everybody, or you might want to mute everybody and then look for the hands up if they have a question or want to make a comment. Do you see how to do that? Steve has a good handle on that.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Yeah, if you go to chat, or actually, I'm sorry.
There's chat.
There's right next to it, there should be participants. It should show 17.
It only shows one. I don't know if that's somebody's hand that's raised or what.
Okay.
Let's see what we got here. Come
It
on.
says there's 17 participants.
Yeah, 17, and I had
So
it.
what I did is I took over hosting again, so I'm going to mute everybody except Paul,
Okay.
and we'll just keep going from there.
All right. That's the reason I couldn't drive. How about that? Okay.
Yeah.
Do I have it now?
No, participants don't need themselves. Yes. Yeah, just one moment. All right, Paul, if you can unmute yourself. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Should be good now.
So is that in the last part there was that the Soaring Safety Foundation recommends a second set of eyes to also go over that assembly of the glider and check it. Now, from what I can peruse out of the various manuals, this is a non-all-inclusive list of the critical assembly checklist. What is basically conducted the first flight of the day, and the wing runners assist if requested. What is basically checking the components, the attachment components for the main wing, such as the spar pins, seeing if the control rods are properly attached, and for the ailerons, the drag devices, flaps, any locking collars and safety pins, and also the outer wing panels, if need be. Again, if the control rods are properly secured. The horizontal stabilizer is properly installed and the elevator control rods are properly attached. All safety pins are installed. And then the rudder, if need be. It's installed and the cables properly attached. And again, I highlight here that the Soaring Safety Foundation recommends a second set of eyes go over this. So ground handling, I've tied into two places here. I combined, really there's 2 points, is when you're just handling them in the hangar or around the hangar and when you're taking them to the flight line. But basically when a glider is unattended, you know, it's tied down perpendicular to the wind with the upwind wing down into the wind and a weight usually attached or on top of the wing to keep it from shifting. The canopy is closed and it's latched and covered, but also they recommend that the hinge part of the canopy be located upwind, not downwind side, and that the tail dolly is also removed to prevent weather vaning. But imperatively, but first of all, if you can tie the glider down, tie it down that way first. Then the other methods you can work on if you do not have tie down capabilities. But if you've got strong winds, again, position that glider with the upwind wing down with a quartering tailwind. You'll notice right here, they recommend a quartering tailwind coming across that glider and not completely cornered, but just from behind the trailing edge. If you have, put a tail stand on it to decrease the wing's angle of attack and engage the gust locks or lock the controls with the seatbelt. But when you move it to the flight line, let's make sure all personnel have been briefed and they're aware of the process of how you do this. And the acceptable areas shown here where they can push or pull on the glider. And really there's only two. It's the wings, leading edges, and the nose. Excuse me just a minute here. You only steer with the wingtips. And if you have to stop it, because I've been driving the cart, the tow vehicle, it's better to push on the nose to stop the glider. And you have the dolly attached because you don't want to drag the nose skid or the tail wheel across the asphalt. Ground, grass, not as bad, but definitely you do not want to drag those onto asphalt. The tow rope length, the books are saying 1/2 the wingspan plus 10 feet. The canopy is closed and no faster than a brisk walk. Really remind yourself of that, no faster than a brisk walk. And there's at least one wing walker. I would suggest two. But during the high winds, you've definitely got to have a wing walker on a runner on each wingtip. And two of the manuals suggest actually having a pilot seated in the cockpit with the spoilers deployed. Now for the pre-flight inspection, which the glider pilot completes, I just went ahead and copied a sample out of the manuals to put here. I'm sure the glider POHs have a representative pre-flight checklist to go through, but the glider pilot is in control of this process. The wing runner only assists if he's requested, but the imperative thing is that the wing runner does not rush the glider pilot to complete this. He does not do anything to force that glider pilot to complete it prior than it should be. And then the question is, do we do another positive control check? I've kind of seen out there that when I've been assisting that we do check the controls, even on each flight, and we check the spoilers and that they're down and locked. So never saying that one's acceptable and two's even better. I like that positive control check on before every flight. Now, the real importance of the wing runner is he's basically the glider pilot's mouthpiece to the tow pilot. And that's one of his main jobs. And with the absence of any radios, or if the 122.9 is really busy, and I forget what our frequency is there at the airport, but hand signals are the primary way of communications, and these are all directed by the glider pilot. Again, the glider pilot is controlling the launch sequence, everything, and the wing runner is just the communication mouthpiece, if you would, to the tow pilot. So one of the important things that came out of the manuals as I was studying this was launching. It's very critical. And we move glider into position on the runway. Now the manuals basically say that to position the glider aligned with the center line of the runway, since there is no steerable wheels on these gliders. It's to line them up with the center line. Now, Tom told me this morning that there is some instances where the glider pilot will ask to have the glider positioned differently, such as downwind or pointing into a crosswind if there's one. But the primary first job is down the center line of the runway to be changed as needed by the command of the glider pilot. But once that thing is positioned, we remove all external attachments and we ensure that they're moved, which is, again, I've noted the dolly that has got to be removed off the glider, because that is critical. And the weights of some of these dollies out there on that fulcrum, that's quite a change in the weight and balance, let alone disturbance of the airflow. But the wing runner also assists the pilot and passenger to get into the glider, the system, with their seat belts if needed. But one thing I've kind of noticed that I picked up in several of the manuals here, but a role for the wing runner is to give the flight information card to the tow pilot. And that would be what the glider pilot intends to do while under tow. The altitude he wants to go, the direction he wants to go. If it's a training environment, then what kind of maneuvers that they are going to do during the tow. Instead of just kind of randomly throwing something out there and having the tow pilot react to it. But then once that's completed, then it's time to start inspecting the tow rope. The important thing is that there's no damage to it, but the one that kind of shocked me and makes sense now is that there's no knots in that tow rope, because it reduces the strength of it by 50%. And he also ensures that the tow rings are correct for the glider that they're going to be towing, whether it's a Schweitzer or whether it's a toss. But again, he is not to rush the glider pilot. So when the glider pilot signals that he's ready, the wing runner ensures that the area is clear of personnel. There's nobody standing in front of the wing or anything like that. And he makes his first initial scan of the traffic pattern to see if there's any aircraft or anything that requires him to signal that that they're to disconnect the tow line and remove that glider from the area or from the runway. So he also will signal for a control check if he hasn't seen the pilot do that. Glider pilot check his controls. He gives a circle thumb to, which makes sense to me, that to check the flight controls. And with a thumbs up from that glider pilot, then he ensures the canopy is down and locked. He offers, this is the only time he offers the tow rope for inspection to the glider pilot, and he agrees to it. He's insured with it. And then the wing runner will ask him to open and close the tail, for the device for the tow hook. If it's the first flight of the day, he's going to complete a release test and then reattach that tow line. But once that tow hook is connected to the glider, he moves clear of the wing. He moves off to the wingtip and awaits instruction again. So when he gets a thumbs up from the pilot, The wing runner will conduct another 360-degree scan of the area, ensure that there's no aircraft coming, and then if he needs be, he'll signal a disconnect to disconnect that tow line, and he removes the glider from the runway, such as, there's an aircraft in the traffic pattern. But after that, then he'll signal the tow pilot to take up the slack. And then once the slack's out, he will issue the hold instruction. And again, he's waiting for a signal from the glider pilot. And when he gets that signal of thumbs up, then he reaches down and he raises the wing to a level position, and he signals the pilot, the tow pilot, to begin the takeoff roll, and trots along to keep that wing level until the glider pilot can control it. And from that point on, he just waits until the glider comes back, and they recover the glider, and they do this process in reverse. So the instruction and testing, like I said, is through the Soaring Safety Foundation. At the end of the test, they have the final exam, which will issue you a certificate. Well, not a certificate like this. This just tells you to complete it. The certificate that you will get is the Civil Air Patrol certificate. I was a little confused. I thought I'd get one from the SSA, but Tom told me that it comes through the CAP. That's the only certificate you get. But this proves that I did complete the test again. I don't know if the club is going to request the wing runners to take this test exam again. I would if it was me, as easy as it is to take. It's only 20 questions, and every one of the questions that is talked about has been brought up in this presentation. So, and the SFF presentation is very good also. So that ensures completion of it. So I'm going to open it up for any questions and any discussion. And I thank you for your time.
Hi, Paul. This is Rich Smith.
Yeah.
So I got a question. I did the tow ropes for several years. I got actually two questions or two statements maybe. The first one is I've noticed being on crew, when I present the rope, most people don't really actually see the rope. They look, but they don't see. And I've even tested this theory out by putting a knot in the rope and showing the rope to the people, and most of them don't see the knot.
Hey, that's a
Of course,
good
I take it
idea.
out before I hook it up. But it's even I get sometimes it's like, okay, yeah, there's a rope there, and it's got a ring on the end of it, and that's about all people look at. So a lot of times they really don't look at it. And the other thing is, when you're hooking the Schweitzer adapter up, which ring should that go through to loop it through, the big ring or the small ring on the toss?
Let me get back to that point. Schweitzer's only got one.
I know
ring.
my. So you see the toss ring, right?
You're
And
right.
you loop it through the metal ring. I know I was always taught it goes through the big ring, but strength-wise is probably no difference. But the ease of actually hooking it up and looping it through, I think the big ring makes the most sense.
So you can actually hook the toss ring up to either ring.
Rich, are you
Yeah,
talking about the
You can,
extension for
because
the
you're just looping the
134
rope.
or for your aircraft?
Pardon?
Are you talking about putting an extension on it for your aircraft?
Right. Yeah. Our adapters that we use.
Right. Yeah, I've seen the big ring most of the time.
So
Yeah.
there
I
is,
use,
so guys, there is a topic to show for our next meeting.
okay.
How to correctly hook up that tossed ring.
Yep. That'd be great, Paul. By the way, excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I have a question, for Jeff. Didn't you put something out, or maybe Dave did, about everybody taking the wing runner test? Jeff, you're muted.
Yes, I think I said something about that at some point. And I think not necessarily retake it, but for everybody to have taken it at some point, you know, within a couple of years or something. But that would be more in your department, Tom, than mine, as far as the testing and keeping record of it. And I don't know that I ever got a certificate for the one I did last year. So you might want to check the records to make sure you have documentation.
Yeah, and possibly have them give you their certificate number, such as mine right there, 744027.
Yeah.
That's a good way to.
If I could, just before I get off here, I did tow ropes for a lot of years, and the adapter for the Schweizers goes through the big tossed ring and then leaves the Schweizer ring at the dead end. And on the tossed rings, the big ring will not fit in the fixture on the aircraft itself. It has to be the small one.
Okay, this is definitely going to be something I'm going to have to do to learn this, guys. So I don't know if I'll have it ready next week, but I'd like to put that together if you don't mind.
That would be fine, Paul. I would like to, and Jeff, I can keep track of it as far as everybody taking the wing runners class again. I would like everybody in the club, personally, I think everybody should take it again and take the test, because it helps you, the test helps you pull out key points of the safety foundation training. It's not going to take you but maybe an hour, hour and a half for everybody to take it. And then I don't know how good the tracking of who took the class and who didn't, but anything to prevent an incident like we had last year, where if we would have had an experienced crew person there, we could have prevented the land out to the west of the field, because the canopy wasn't latched. And on takeoff, the trainee, the instructor took the glider away from the trainee and ended up landing in the corner. And luckily no one was hurt, and there was some minor damage to the glider, but it could have been a lot worse, because they were only about 75 to 100 feet off the ground when the canopy started open. So I really think, I don't think we need to have a board decision. I can send out an email and request everybody in the club to take the wing runner course again, and send me a copy of the certificate that you get from the Civil Air Patrol when you've successfully completed the test. Another thing I wanted to point out that's really important, and I know that most people know this, but if your instructor requests tells you that he wants you to box the wake after departure, normally that boxing the wake, you need to obviously inform the tow pilot. It should it should not start until you're 1,000 feet AGL. And the tow pilot needs to know because it causes some things to happen to the tow plane that he needs to anticipate and be aware that you're going to do it. You need to make sure the tow pilot's aware of boxing the way.
So,
We did try using that form. I think, Rick, you made one up and we tried it a couple of times. Is that something we need to do?
are you talking to me, Tom?
Yeah. What's your thoughts?
No, we didn't. Dan talked about it, but you know, I see other clubs use it. And as a tow pilot, it's always nice to know what the hell's going on because we can't hardly see anything back there. And not to be surprised, but you know, we do rope breaks. We do, you know, pattern altitude. We do a bunch of things besides boxing the wake. And especially with new pilot trainees, you guys are making the transition as instructors where, you know, at some point they're doing the tow on their own, and the first couple can be interesting. I don't know if that makes sense, but I see a lot of clubs use the cards, and we've never done that. We've never, ever done that.
Yeah, we did last summer, Rick. I did it 2 different times. I made up a form. The only problem with the form I made up, and it took a little getting used to. I think it's a good idea to use the form. One of the problems was, where do you put the wing runner takes it up to the tow pilot when he taxis in, and he gives it to him. It tells what the aircraft identification is, the altitude they want to go to, and any special instructions. The problem for the tow pilot is, where do I put it and keep track of all these cards that I'm getting? We need to put like a paper clip in the tow plane so that we can hold on to these cards. We used it 2 different times when I was tow piloting.
I never saw one. You've got those pockets you put in the planes though.
Well, yeah, that's true. Now we got the pockets in the plane. We did that this last year. So that's a good idea. We could do that. I was the one that started the form, and I can go ahead and send that out to everybody and say, you know, is there any suggestions on how we can improve this form? It doesn't have to have a lot of information, but it's like, what altitude are you wanting to go to? You're going to go to 2,000 or 3,000 above ground level. And if there's any special instructions and the call sign of the aircraft. It can be fairly simple. And I thought it worked pretty good that the 2 times that we used it.
My suggestion would be use index cards because they're not so flimsy and likely to fly around.
Yeah.
I got in the jets, we had cards that were on heavier stock paper. So that's easy to get. Office Depot and Office Max have them, and they'll even have them in the size forms that you want, and they'll print them up for you. And you want 1,000, they'll get 1,000 for you. But yeah, the heavier stock is definitely what you're going to need. But they can also print them up for you.
Yeah, especially when you're standing in the prop wash.
Yeah. And you can always give the prior flight's card back to the wing walker, and you guys just exchange cards, and that way we can take that card back and we've got it as a record.
So there's one thing on here that it says remove all external attachments, which is the dolly. My recollection is that you're actually supposed to show it to the pilot, the PIC, and demonstrate that it's off and that it's at the side of the runway.
You'll pass the test on the wing walkers test then, because that's one of the questions.
Yeah, because we had that happen last year once, right?
Yes, we did.
And
We've had it multiple. I've been involved with the ground crew. I know of at least 3 times we've had it happen in the last 5 or 6 years. So it's partly the pilot and command's fault. It's partly the ground crew. I mean, depending on how many you have on a ground crew, someone should notice that. Someone not only looking for traffic before you launch, but looking, doing the final check of the aircraft. Do you see something that looks abnormal?
So From a private pilot, glider pilot's perspective, you guys who assemble your gliders, do you always do a positive control check after assembly?
Yes, I did. And I think most everybody does. When at the point where they assemble the plane. Maybe out at the runway if nobody's helped them with the assembly.
Yeah.
Wait,
Because we have had one incident where I think it was the aileron was not connected on a private ship and it ended well, but it could have been disastrous.
Yes, that's true. I'm aware of that. I normally do a positive control check before I even move it from the T hangar area to the end of the runway. But it wouldn't hurt to have the ground crews aware of that, and they can at least ask you,
If you've
do you
done
want
it.
to do a positive control check or have you already done one?
Yeah, because that takes two people to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, normally I have two people because I need help with the wing assembling the glider. So that's normally when I do it, when I'm right after I get both wings on, do a positive control check while the person's still there.
Let me make a comment about the tailwheel dolly. In the presentation, it kind of led you to believe we put the dolly on, we take the airplane back after a flight. We don't do that in our club. It puts a little bit more opportunity for damage to the fuselage. So we generally will not put the tailwheel dolly on when we return the aircraft from landing. And having said that, you can steer the aircraft when the tail wheel is on the grass. Once it gets to the asphalt, that's when you need to push down on the nose and get that wheel off the ground so we don't wear it down.
But the first flights of the day with the club ships from the hangar to the runway, and the same with all the private ships, they all have dollies on them when they get there for their first flights.
Yes.
so would you take the dolly off prior to moving it to the runway?
No, it's acceptable to keep the dolly on when you take it out the first time. Just that's when the wing runner really needs to make sure that the pilot sees it, that the dolly's off.
Yeah, okay.
And one more comment about when we park the gliders, generally we park them parallel or perpendicular to the runway and not perpendicular to the wind unless the wind is really strong. But you have to be aware of where the wind is and then make sure that the upwind wing is down. And if you've got any questions about if the aircraft is stable enough or not, put a weight on the wing. The other thing is when you're staging and you got a bunch of gliders out there, take the tailwheel dolly off so that the glider won't weather vane if the wind blows it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've
Tom,
never.
Tom, is this, you're talking about this area here, you're saying we don't normally put them perpendicular to the wind?
Yeah, that's correct.
That is correct, or does that need to be changed, Tom?
In our particular case, we usually have it the glider pointed towards the runway,
Okay.
regardless of what the wind's doing.
So,
Now, on the test, when you take the test, if they ask you the question,
yeah,
you tie it down perpendicular to the wind.
that's
But
right.
in practice,
Okay.
we don't do that.
Okay. All right.
We've never actually, I've never seen the glider sitting there with the spoilers open either.
Well, that's because you have to have a pilot generally inside to keep them open.
Yeah, they're sprung so they close.
Yeah.
You can't get them to stay open unless you put a safety belt around them or something like that. They're not going to stay open.
So how many of you guys flew the Blaniks?
I did.
Rich? Did you?
I flew the Blank
Yes.
today.
So I flew the Atlantic.
I flew
Do you
the Atlantic.
remember when we used to sit down at the east end of the runway when we had strong winds and we'd sit in the Blantics and see how long we could fly 'em before the wings hit the ground?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
That was good practice, actually.
Yep.
You piqued my interest. What do you mean hit the ground? You did what?
Well, you get if the wind was strong enough, you get the wings level and then let go of the wings when you're sitting inside the cockpit. And then you would fly the glider in place and see how long you could keep the wings up and fly the airplane before the wing hit the ground.